Okay, this is English 201, week 2, part 6. So let's take a look at this Phoenix and Turtle poem. Just to kind of, I just want to put it all together. I've taught you about the 5 key terms, and I want you to see them all in action. I also want to give you, it's also the most difficult thing we're going to read all semester, but it's also only 1 page long. And it illustrates something really important that I want you to see, which is that my role here is a little bit like a trainer in a gym. Um, Many of my students feel like they can't understand difficult poems in the same way that they may feel like they can't lift weights at the gym. Are too heavy, or not that they're too heavy. Many of my students feel like they can understand difficult poems in the same way they feel like they can't do a bunch of push-ups. You can. You 100% can. You can read any really difficult poem and you can do a bunch of push-ups. But the thing is most people, if they try to read a difficult poem on their own, or if they try to do push-ups every day on their own, they just give up. You do it for a little bit, they try, so you get a poem and there's some words you don't know, and you look the words from the dictionary, and then after a while you're just like, this is boring, this is annoying, I'm not doing this anymore. They do push-ups, and you do a bunch of push-ups, and you're supposed to do them every day, and you sort of go, I'm not gonna do it. What you need in both cases, the push-ups and the poetry, is you need a guy like me standing right next to you being like, you can do it, yeah, 10 more, 9 more, 8 more, and like it's my job to kind of, if I'm there guiding you, encouraging you to do it, you can figure it out. It's just that most people don't take the time. And that's why I wanted to tell you the story about why did I take the time to learn this difficult poem, because it was in a Batman comic book, and I was like, I love superheroes, I love Shakespeare, now they're in the same place, I really ought to know this poem, so I learned it. And now you're going to learn it too. Now, I bet when I read that poem to you in the Batman comic book, it didn't make any goddamn sense at all. Um, that it made very little sense to me. It's very hard to follow. But the magic trick here is that we're going to go through this poem, every line, every word, and when we're done, the whole poem's going to make sense. So let's go through it. Now, when I say go through it, what are we doing? We're practicing metaphor, summary, metaphor, irony, theme, and sound. And that way you can see it all in one place on 1 page. Okay, here we go. Let's take a look at the poem. I already told you about the title, so we don't need to go over that again. By William Shakespeare. Oh, by the way, I guess I should say William Shakespeare is he wrote a bunch of plays in England around the year 1600, and he's the most famous writer who ever lived in any country. And people say he's the best writer ever, and that's true. I don't know what to tell you about that. He just is literally the best. Okay, so let's take a look at this poem. So one of the things you're going to notice right off the bat is these lines are pretty short, and they come in little chunks of 4. Each one of these things is called a stanza. A stanza in a poem is like a paragraph in an essay. So these are stanzas: stanza 1, stanza 2, stanza 3, stanza 4. And then you notice the pattern changes a little bit. So instead of getting them 4-line stanzas, you start getting 3-line stanzas. So, but that's the basic pattern of the stanzas. Okay. You can also see the rhyme here: lay, tree, be, obey, jur, friend, and near, dict, wing, king, strict, white, can, swan, right. So the pattern here is the first line rhymes with the last line, and the two ones in here rhyme with each other. So it would be A, B, B, A, or A, B, B, A, C, D, D, C. So the basic pattern in each stanza, the first line rhymes with the last line, and the 2 middle lines rhyme with each other. That changes when we get down here, where all 3 of these rhyme, all 3 of these rhyme, all 3 of these rhyme. Now they're a little weird, sometimes the rhymes are not obvious, but be, she, be, repair, fair, prayer. So that's the pattern of rhyme. We can also do a little bit more with sound since I'm here. I don't know why the fuck did I just start with sound? It's like the worst thing to start with. Oh, I know why. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's fine. Also, notice the pattern. And again, you don't even need to know what the hell is going on in the poem, but I hope you can hear it. Let the bird of loudest lay on the sole Arabian tree. Herald sad and trumpet be, to whose sound chaste wings obey. Let the bird of loudest lay on the sole Arabian tree. Facebook, Facebook, face. Let the bird of loudest lay. Facebook, Facebook. You hear it? Let the bird of loudest, it's 4. Let the bird of loudest lay. Facebook, 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 Facebook. right? Let the bird of loudest lay on the sole Arabian tree, herald sad and trumpet be, to whose sound chaste wings obey. But thou freaking, but thou shrieking harbinger, foul precursor of the fiend, augur of the fever's end, to this troop come thou not near. From this session interdict every fowl of tyrant wing, save the eagle feathered king, keep the obsequy so strict. So there's also a pattern where there are like 8 syllables per line, and they follow a pattern of Facebook, 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 Facebook. That's stress, unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stressed, unstressed. And that's sound. And there's other sound things in there, but that's the rhythm, that's the rhyme pattern, you've got it. And the rhythm, you've got it. That's what makes it sound like poetry. Um, Now, the thing about poetry that confuses people, especially old shit like this, is the vocabulary is difficult and the word order can be strange, but basically these are just English sentences. The vocabulary makes it real hard. There's also some weird mythology that you'd have to look up in order to find out. That's sort of the research end of things. But it's very doable. It's hard, but you can do it. Most people will give up, but if you choose not to give up, you could actually do it. So let's go through the poem. Let's do it. Let the bird of loudest lay on the sole Arabian tree, herald sad and trumpet be, to whose sound chaste wings obey. So it's an instruction. The first 4 lines here are, I'll tell you this, to make it a little bit easier. Yeah, you know what? Actually, let's do that first. Let's talk about summary first. Let's start with summary. Now, one of the things I tell you to do, students are, usually when you go to the movies, you're going because you want to see what happens to the characters, and you don't want spoilers. So when you go see Avengers Endgame, you want to know what happens to the characters, and that's why you're going to the movies. And you want it to be a surprise. If somebody tells you who dies in Avengers Endgame before you get there, you're going to be pissed off because you're going to feel like, man, you fucked up that movie. I wanted to be surprised, and you ruined it for me. Because most people going to the movies nowadays are going to find out what happens. This is not true of poetry, and it is not true of Shakespeare. People went to see Shakespeare plays. They already knew the ending when they got there at the beginning. In fact, Romeo and Juliet, which is a very famous Shakespeare play where 2 teenagers in love commit suicide. People knew the story already. It was like a famous story. They had read it, but Shakespeare didn't invent that story. Somebody else wrote that as a poem, and Shakespeare turned it into a play, and nobody remembers the dude that wrote the poem. He sucks. But Shakespeare's version was so famous, but people knew. They knew what happened. And if they didn't know what happened, Shakespeare tells you. The very beginning of Romeo and Juliet, 2 houses, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona, where we lay our scene, from ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. From forth the fatal loins of these 2 foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers takes their life. They tell you right at the beginning, these 2 kids are going to commit suicide at the end of the play. A lot of my students find this insane. Why would anybody go see a play if they knew the ending in advance? If they knew what happened in advance? That's ridiculous. But actually, we still do this sometimes. Harry Potter was an extremely popular book series. But when they made the movies, people went to go see the movies after they had read the books. They still wanted to see the movie, even though they knew everything that was going to happen in all 8 movies. Because they had read the books and they wanted to see them adapted on screen. So Twilight was also like that. Lots of people know what's going to happen at the end already, and they still want to see it because they're there for other things. So, for example, when you go see John Wick, it almost doesn't matter how the movie ends. I'm just there to watch punching and kicking. So I don't care how it ends. I'm here I want to watch fight scenes, and you can't spoil. There's no way to spoil John Wick because there's nothing you could say that would make the fight scenes any less awesome. So Shakespeare's a little bit like this. And so one thing that'll make The Phoenix and the Turtle easier is to just literally just go on Wikipedia and look up a fucking summary of the thing and then read it. Because that way you have some basic idea of what is going on. And that is what I started to do when I read the poem. I went on Wikipedia and I looked it up and I tried to figure out what the fuck is happening in this poem. It's a bird funeral. The poem is about a bird funeral. The first part of the poem is deciding which birds get to go to the funeral and which birds do not get to go to the funeral and what roles they're going to have at the funeral. The second part of the poem is talking about the 2 birds, the phoenix and the turtle, who were in love. And it's talking about how powerful their love is. And then it's so powerful that kind of like I don't know, the god of reason or whatever, of the mind, decides to say something about how amazing these birds are, and then the poem is over. So it's a funeral. It's a funeral, and it has three parts, which is deciding which birds get to do what, and then saying something lovely about dead people, the dead birds that were in love, and then someone else says something nice about the dead birds that were in love and how powerful their love was, and then that's the end. Pick it up in the next video.